Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Springfield Armory National Historic Site, taking a look at some particularly rare and interesting Garand rifles. This does not look anything like an M1 Garand, and that's because it is not an M1. This is the T31. It is the very last rifle that John Garand designed while he worked here at Springfield Armory. So this project was proposed or was approved in October of 1948, and the intent was to come up with a way to design a rifle that wasn't crippled by muzzle blast and concussion and recoil. Now, at this point in 48, Springfield Armory has been working on full auto conversions of the M1 Garand rifle, things like the T20 project. And all of those guns in their various iterations have problems with recoil and muzzle blast. And well, one of the easiest ways to fix that would be to make the barrel longer, but you know, the Garand is kind of a long rifle to begin with and has a 24-inch barrel. If you want to make it longer, one good way to do that is to make it a bullpup. So that's what John Garand did with this system. And then he also gave it a truly bizarre, unique operating system. It was almost like a pneumatic system. So the way this originally worked is there was a gas port up here at the muzzle, and it essentially just blew gas into this open tubular handguard that's open on the inside. And then there was a piston down here at the breech end, and you essentially had like a pneumatic actuating system where the pressure in this tube, without a contained piston, would operate a moving component at the back, which would then push the operating rod back and unlock and cycle like a normal firearm. Now, I don't have an exact date for when they did the testing, but eventually the gun was built. By the way, they made two of these. This complete gun is serial number 2. Serial number 1 survives only as a receiver, like a working action here. But both of them are still here at Springfield. Anyway, when they did testing on this, after 2,300 rounds, the gas vent ports in the barrel were completely clogged up. So they pulled it apart to see what was going wrong, and they found nearly a pound of carbon fouling inside the handguard tube. So 2,300 rounds for a pound of fouling, that comes out to about 3 grains per shot of carbon fouling accumulating in this tube. And the reason would be that you had such an expansion in volume that you had a significant drop in temperature, and you had a lot of carbon that was just essentially congealing itself onto inside surfaces here as it cooled down. So after they took it apart, found that issue, they realized, okay, this isn't really going to work, and they rebuilt the rifle with a much more traditional short stroke piston. Now, the rebuilt rifle looks the same from the outside, and this is, in fact, the rebuilt rifle. This has a new gas port back here, and we'll take this apart in just a moment, and I'll show you how it works, and I think how it originally worked, but we have to sort of infer some of that. But Garand put together a truly unusual looking firearm here, really a sign of an inventive, creative designer, totally willing to think outside the box. This is select fire. This has a 28-inch barrel. It is chambered for, well, it ultimately ended up chambered for the T65 cartridge, the progenitor of 7.62 NATO. 20-round detachable box magazines. Super cool. Let's pull it apart. All right, are you ready for this weirdness? Because, man, this is like no other rifle that we've ever messed with. So, buttstock, the recoil spring is actually located inside the buttstock. We have a 20-round magazine. It releases at the front. It actually has catches front and back, and they're both spring-loaded. So loading the magazine, you just put it in and just push it into place. To take it out, pull the front tab, pull the nose down. If we look at this, you might think that this looks a bit familiar. This is the magazine that would essentially become the M14 magazine. Moving back a little bit, our ejection port is here, hidden underneath the op rod. We have a grip safety, and then we have on this side a rotary selector safety lever. So to operate this, you push it in and then rotate, and you can actually see it operating right there. All right, sorry, had to cock the rifle. If I push this in and rotate it up like that, that is the safe position. And this is the sear here. When I pull the trigger, this is going to go down. but it can't when the rifle's in safe. If I push this in, I can rotate it down one position. That gives me semi-auto. When I drop this down, the op rod snaps forward, and that fires the rifle. And then I can push the safety in and rotate it one more position. That gives me full auto. The rear sight is pretty clearly inspired by either the Johnson or the FG42. We don't have a front sight on this, unfortunately, but that's the result of some of its being worked over. Charging handle is right there, and if I open that up, you can see the ejection port. So this is cut away specifically, well, it's timed and cut away so that it opens right as the case is coming out of the action. And then that snaps forward into battery. Now we have our handguard, which is covered in some type of rubber coating to insulate it, I expect, as well as to give you a little bit of grip. Sling swivel on the side. And then we have this weird set of muzzle device things up here. So what we have going on is a flash hider. This is the original gas vent from the sort of pseudo-pneumatic operating system. When this got to enough pressure, excess gas would vent out the front, although I don't know how, because the actual vent mechanism is long gone. We have bayonet lug and rings at the front, so you can put a bayonet on it. And then this would originally have been the mount for the grenade launcher sight, and I suspect the regular front sight as well. Now, the original gas port was right up here at the front, and we know that because you can just barely see it there. The grenade launcher sight mount actually goes through to the gas port, and Garand had this cool system where as you adjusted the grenade launcher sight for different ranges, it would constrict or open the gas port to give you enough gas pressure to launch the standard grenade to that specific range. So you had an adjustable gas system that was adjusted based on grenade launching range, which is kind of cool. Now, when they rebuilt the operating system, they plugged the gas port up here, so this no longer would have done that function, but when it was first made, it did. Before I forget, here are the markings on the top of the receiver. Cal 30, T31, serial number, well, SA is Springfield Armory, serial number 2. And on our lone receiver here, they're a little more crudely marked, but there you go, T31, Springfield Armory, number 1. Now, in order to disassemble this, we're going to start at the back end. There is a screw here, but it's actually a spring plunger. Push that down, and there we go. That allows me to pivot the buttstock down, and if you see this guy right there, that is the recoil spring. So once this is down, the recoil spring is disconnected from the action. So there's a coil spring down in here. Like virtually every element of this is pretty darn non-standard. Next, we have a spring in basically in the bolt carrier. I'm going to unlock this. There we go. We'll pull that out. All right, I can now pull the bolt all the way back. There we go. And then we're going to pull this back, pivot it down, and the bolt comes off of the op rod and bolt carrier. Now you can see something that's a little more traditional. Let's pull that. This guy then, by the way, goes in here, and it acts as a safety device. So you can see the cutout there. This allows the bolt to be down out of battery, but when it goes up, this piece can go farther underneath and prevents the bolt, the locking wedge from dropping down out of battery. So this is controlled by the op rod, and it just ensures that the gun can't unlock unless the op rod or until the op rod has come back. If we take a look at receiver number 1 here, which doesn't have the rubber cheek piece on it, you can actually see this pretty well. There's an opening right there. So there's your locking wedge right there. You can see the lug on it. When this goes forward, it's going to lift up into the locked position right there. When the charging handle comes back, when the op rod comes back, that drops it down. So you can see by how much I'm moving this, how much dwell time you have at the beginning. So for this whole period, the bullet is leaving the barrel, gas pressure is leaving the barrel, and then the locking wedge drops and the bolt starts to open. I suspect that this has been cut out to use with high-speed camera to get an exact idea of just how much dwell time there is and when everything starts to move relative to the bullet. All right, that is your basic field strip, but I am not content with that. We're going to go ahead and fully strip this rifle down. And that means we have to go out to the muzzle. So to remove the front muzzle device, as this is a rebuilt gun, we actually have a little set screw here. I'm going to loosen that up. I don't have to take it out, just loosen it. And then this device comes off the front of the barrel. This is one of those unusual guns that is, in fact, asymmetrical. The barrel is offset to the left side of all of the parts in the handguard. This was originally the gas vent. The gas port was right there. That basically used to be the gas port. When they rebuilt this, as far as I can tell, they put a new barrel on it. The old barrel would have had a gas port there and threading and some sort of nut to lock this in its correct position. With the muzzle device off, we can then rotate the handguard tube. So, pull that off. This is just a big hollow tube, nothing in there. This would have originally been the container for the pneumatic operating system. Then we have this thing. So this is our new gas block. Our gas port is down here. This, I am pretty sure, is just a spacer. It's in there to fit onto this to ensure that this is sitting at the proper depth. So I can take it off. I think that's why it kind of looks like such an odd piece. It doesn't look like it belongs. The material and the finish is totally different, and it doesn't move. It looks like this ought to be a plunger. It's not. Just pretty sure that's just a spacer, and it seals the gas port at this end. So we are also going to remove this nut. That comes off, and now we can take off the functional gas block. So you can see the gas port right there. That now lines up with this guy. There's your gas port right there, which goes through into this little gas tappet. So this is the more traditional short stroke piston or gas tappet system that they put in when they rebuilt the gun. We have a spacer ring to take out. Again, this would have sat right there. This little gas tappet is going to push the op rod right here. That op rod, which goes into this casting and comes out inside, you can't quite see it. It comes out right in there. Anyway, with the gas block removed, we can now remove the entire pistol grip assembly. That comes off. Note that it has these two little points, which are going to interface with matching recesses back here. There we go. That comes out the front. That's why you can't remove this in a general field strip, because it's sitting inside the grip assembly like that. So the grip assembly has to come off first, then the op rod can come out. The grip assembly, first off, looks like a Star Wars blunderbuss blaster thing by itself, but it also doesn't do as much as it looks weirder than it really is, I think. So you've got the safety mechanism, you've got the trigger mechanism, you've got the grip safety. It does mount the rear sight, and it's an interface for the gas block, but that's all it does. And of course, if you want to use this in the winter with heavy gloves, you can actually snap this sheet metal trigger guard down out of the way, and presto, now you've got essentially a winter trigger setup. All right, and that is now detail stripped. We've got our op rod out, This is the receiver. That's the whole receiver there. Buttstock is going to fold up behind it with the recoil spring inside. Barrel threads in right there. This is very long. This is a 28-inch, sorry, like a 28.5-inch barrel. There you are. There is John Garand's T31 Bullpup detail stripped. This rifle really handles differently than anything else that I've ever handled. It does not feel like a normal rifle. It doesn't feel like a normal bullpup even. The parts are so slimmed down. There's enough metal to do the job that they need to do, but you normally just have a lot more stuff around the gun, and the T31 just doesn't have that. So it's got a little bit of a recoil cheek piece, not recoil, a little bit of a cheek piece here on the left side. It is, as a bullpup, it's only shootable right-handed. Such a compact and handy-ish, weird, anyway, it's a bizarre rifle to handle. They got as far as redesigning it to use a standard gas port, but this wasn't the top priority at Springfield at the time, and John Garand retired from Springfield on April 30th, 1953. And when he did, this project functionally ended. This was his project, and there wasn't anyone else at the Armory who was willing or interested or capable of taking this project farther forward. So it ended at that point. That's why we only have the two guns, the one here rebuilt into its new, more traditionally operating configuration. I don't have any other information on how this performed in testing besides the original reliability issues with the original mechanism. It sure is a heck of an interesting gun, and it's very cool to see that John Garand was not just stuck with the rotating bolt long stroke gas piston that he made his name with, that he spent nearly 2 decades designing and then perfecting for the US Army. He was in fact perfectly capable of going from 1945, cease working on the M1, and tackle something completely different. So very cool to see. And very cool of Springfield to give me the opportunity to pull this off of display, actually, to film it for you guys. So they have, of course, a public museum here that has some really good exhibits on the history of particularly American small arms, including a bunch of really weird stuff like this. So if you find yourself in Springfield, definitely take the time, stop by the Springfield Armory National Historic Site Museum and check out what they have on display. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.